Mental health, psychology, faith, suicide, all these things feel like they don't mix. And they're very abrupt in the conversation. And I think it's interesting anytime that we have a conversation around mental health and faith that we don't realize how connected they truly are. We've heard a lot of things from psychologists over the years, we've therapists, counselors, and there's kind of this hesitancy that is in the church and that even might be in you that says, we just can't do that. Like something's off about it. And I just want to address that for what it is and to say, if you're in that place right now where you're like, we can't mix these two or they don't go together, that's perfectly okay. And I hope that my job here in this little moment that we have together is not to convince you differently, but to maybe offer a different perspective on what that could look like. Jesus himself, fully man, fully God, actually had all aspects to him. He had an emotional side, he had the mental side, physical side, social side, and even what we would consider his spiritual or ethical side of who he was. That creates us as a whole being. Emotions are things that we actually project and that we actually show when things are happening in our lives. Emotions are not negative or positive. Emotions are indicators of what we believe. They're things that started with a belief. And that's why mental is very important for us as a person. We have a mind, we have a thought process. Thoughts then create that feeling, which then create a behavior and how we act amongst the people that we're with. Those thoughts that create those emotions, that create those behaviors, are just things that are happening within us because of our mental state and our emotional state. Those things mixed together then actually impact our physical state. You ever been in a moment where you've not felt well mentally, or you're not just in a place, maybe you're sad or despaired about something, and then you grab that ice cream bowl and then you eat that ice cream and you're like, all by myself. You do whatever that moment is. That's why we have the terminology comfort food, because your body's telling you, hey, I need that thing that'll activate that thing so that I could feel better. There are things that are happening there that'll impact all the aspects of who we are. When we impact our mental, emotional, and physical self, we then also impact our social self. Do you know, like when you're not feeling well, you're like, I really don't want to hang out with anybody. I don't want to hang around anyone. That impacts our social relationships, the connection that we get with others around. You ever felt so despaired that it's even impacted the way that you've related to Jesus, to God the Father, to the Holy Spirit? Now, mental is something that is happening for all of us. We all have mental health, we all have emotional health, physical health. None of these are void of each other. They all work intertwinedly through this process. What I want us to know is, what do we do with that within our churches? How do we interact with that? Because we're really good in our churches in working with people who have physical ailments, people that may have a broken bone, people that may have been experiencing leukemia, cancer, these physical ailments that have impacted them. Which reminds me of a story. There's this woman who was going to do her laundry one day, and her laundry was outside. You had to go like around and down into a basement. And as she was going in there, she noticed the door was open. As she noticed the door was open, she started to go down and realized there was a skunk in her basement. So she hustled out of there, hurried back up to her house, and made a phone call to the animal control and said, hey, I've got a skunk in my basement. What do I do? And he goes, this is easy, ma'am. All you need to do is create a little bread trail out of that basement and into the woods, and that skunk will go away. And so she creates a little bread trail out into the forest and waits. The next morning, she gets up and goes down to do her laundry and realizes the door is open. And as she gets down there, she realizes now there are two skunks. In our church communities, we're really good with one skunk. Physical ailments, when somebody's sick in our churches, it's the casserole train, it's the prayer train. Elders are coming over, people know what's going on, they're having this process happen. But we're not so good with two skunks. A two skunk problem might be the mere fact that somebody's having a depressive episode. Someone's experiencing anxiety, or maybe they're in a schizophrenia moment. I don't know what it may be. But what we do then in those times often is what I would call informal shunning. We begin pushing those individuals aside, not bringing them closer. And I would ask that when people are experiencing physical ailments and people are experiencing mental illnesses or mental episodes or challenges or crises, that we would respond the same as people who are willing to come alongside them, to embrace them, to walk through this process with them, and not shun them or push them aside. Because that individual needs help just as much as the person who has a physical ailment, someone that's going through a divorce, someone that's struggling with something within their marriage. I would say this, that that person needs just as much help. And you as a pastor, you as the leader of those congregations, you can be part of that healing process for them, to allow them to know that they're seen, to allow them to know that their illness that they're navigating or journeying with, hope is available to them and recovery is possible.